Vlad Kampov. He is from Wix, and Vlad is a guild engineering manager and Wix lead software engineer and engineering manager with a focus on front end. With years of commercial software development and leadership experience, including high-loaded real-time streaming applications and advanced data visualizations.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't be able to present that good myself. And hello all. It's again nice to see you all. I know that several people joined us during the conversation. So thank you. Welcome. It's our first event together with Fwdays. We are here at Wix office and let's give it a go. This would be a very nice presentation, but let me first introduce myself. Apart from what our colleague said, yes, I'm front-end guild engineering manager at Wix. I worked here it's my third year already. Lead software engineer, work at IT for around 10 years, I guess. But also now I have a YouTube channel, I have a podcast. Last year I ran 42 kilometers in Berlin Major Marathon. I played guitar. For some reason I recently bought NFT. It's not a hype anymore, but I did it. It's basically a donation to Ukrainian army, but whatever. And I love memes. I even have my Telegram channel with memes, so you would be able to subscribe afterwards. But why we're here, it's to discuss a new, very holy war approach of trying to optimize the performance of React application. It's also related to the global state management, and it would be really nice to present it to you during the taking into account the last presentation given by Sergey. But let's talk about the problem. So the most painful things, apart from the architecture and designing the application at React, is, I think, performance. And how do we optimize? I think that if we take into account React docs, which actually recently been updated, and now it's have different URL if you didn't know. But basically it's hooks, use effects, use callback, use memo. It's virtualization long lists with proper key in property. It's avoid reconciliation, server-side rendering, and so on and so on. So I'm sure that you're front-end developers and you know about the stuff I'm talking about. But the most important here, I think, is actually avoiding reconciliation. So the fact that we need to be smart about how do we re-render components. And again, if we go to the internet and ask Google or ChatGPT, how do we avoiding that stuff, we will get a suggestion about React memo or about should component update if we are using quite legacy code with classes. Again, use callbacks, use memo, and use effect hooks with right properties for them. So it's a little array to fire hook only when it's needed. And again, if we are using the local, and if we are using legacy codes with classes, it's a proper batch state update. So if you're writing functional components, it's not related anymore. But let's try an example. I had a slide with a code right here, but I thought, okay, let's give it a go and let's try to implement it on our own. Right now, it should be quick. We will try to do a simple application with counter and child of it, and we would want to learn to explore how components are being re-rendered when we change the state, basically. So what I did, I got prepared. I created with Create React app a simple project where I removed everything. So right now we have, just app CSS, app.js with nothing. And here I will do yarn start. And but while it's been running, I need to mention that actually the latest React documentation do not suggest anymore to use Create React app. It suggests to use meta frameworks like Next.js or Remix, because they think that you don't need to re-implement the configuration on your own again and again. So Next.js or Remix already solved all the problems you're supposed to solve when you are trying to build a production-grade application. So coming to it, this is it. Let's try if this re-renders, if we have hot reload. Yeah, here we go. So we have this page. Let's try to build a little application with all the suggestions of how do we optimize for renders, right? So it's only 3 components, so it should be simple. We would start with, let's say, counter. We would go with React memo. I would probably need to import React here. So we would need to, I have Copilot installed, so it helps me a little bit. So we will have, I don't know, let's give it a button which goes on click increment. We would do decrement. The same button to do decrement. And let's have a paragraph with counts where we just render the count. So as I mentioned, we need to try to be, optimize it as much as possible. So I will use callback right here. I've seen a Twitter thread about the usage of use callback as less as possible for some reason. But my personal opinion is this is because people should be smart about using the proper depths for the hooks. So it's really easy to have a mistake when you're optimizing the use callback creation. And why do we need it here? Nice dog. Why do we need it here? It's because basically when React renders, it runs the function. So when you have function inside the function, you are recreating the increment and decrement function again and again. It's a small function, right? So it's not a big deal at the moment, but on a big scale application, it could have potential problems with that. We'll have a little component called child without any property right here, where we will be just returning also paragraph child. Child will be used here, and I will use this count here. So again, I'm trying to investigate how React renders components, right? So how do we debug the code? We are using console logs. This is it. This should be a joke, so a little laugh would be enough. Render console log and child render. Cool. So we will open the browser and we will take a look basically at console logs right now. And obviously we have increasing amounts of logs of counter render, and because of the child React memo, it doesn't renders, right? So if we remove, for example, React memo, we will have child render again. So it's quite simple. As well as if we, for example, would want to put a count here as a property, so do a little prop drilling, as they say, and put it as a props here, count. Even with React memo, because it needs to be updated, we will have this console logs. So it's simple, right? I mean, it's basically a boilerplate code, so it's nothing new. And you probably think why this guy speaks a lot about such a simple application. Okay, but how do we optimize? How we can be even smarter about that? In terms of the render, probably there's nothing to do anymore. The only thing you can do, where's my presentation here? The only thing you possibly can do is use React context. But React context in the end is not the optimization for a render, is the optimization to avoid prop drilling. So in the end, this is quite a similar code with using React context. You can see that we created here counter context, which is imported from React. We created a simple hook, use counter, and basically we moved the functions to change the state to the app, and we providing that value to the context. So this is quite similar, and in the end, with this code, we are getting quite the same behavior. And again, this is logical, but they're the same picture, right? So this is not the optimization for performance. And we should ask ourselves, we just had a talk about Redux and Mobix, should Mobix or Redux be smarter about that? The question is, I have an example of Mobix right here. It's not, it will be the same. So here we use counter store, as Mobix suggested. We also created the context and one more hook to use the context in the component. And we make the counter component observer, as well as child observer, and use context provider right here, where we created a new counter store. And counter store is after observable. So in the end, if we implement that, we will have, again, the same behavior, because they're the same picture, right? And it's just because React works this way. This is the higher amount of optimization you can give. But Preact signals doesn't work that way. And this would be right now interesting to take a look how it is possible to avoid even simple re-renders. Again, since I have my IDE here open, I will rewrite a little bit of code. First of all, I will import signal from Preact signals React. So this is the library which is designed for React, provided by Preact, started with P, and Preact basically is the version of React where guys decided to throw away everything they think we don't need at React to make the bundle smaller, but it works quite the same way. So if we would want to rewrite our state to use signals, we would need to, instead of this state, define signal. And this is a simple function with the initial value. So this we remove. The next question would be probably, can I do this? 4 spaces, cool. The next question would be, how do we change the value of the signal? Because previously we had set count. It would be like this. So the same with decrement. So you see we are using the kind of object instance of signal, which is in a constant value, and it has value property, so we can change it like this directly. And if we want to use signal value in the render, we will just go with this. And let's remove the prop drilling at the moment. So with these changes, if we would use state or context or Mobix or Redux, we would see counter render on each increment or decrement, right? But now you see the UI updates, but we have no console logs. And this is the most interesting part of it. So it's already kind of optimization, and you can imagine how avoiding the rendering of the whole tree of React could benefit us. Also, I removed the prop drilling, but what if I want to use signal inside, down by the tree, inside our child? Actually, signal shouldn't be inside the component at all. It can live outside of the React world at all. And it can be consumed inside child like this. So it's re-exportable, importable, and you can basically define it in a separate folder and import from there. And again, trying this example, we don't see updates of child. Why? Magic, right? It's like that. Okay, what we also can do with that, we have a couple of additional functions I should talk about before I go to the next step of our discussion. It's what if we want to react on the change of our signal? It has its own effect. Don't mistake it with the React use effect. It's basically a function where you put a function as an argument, and you can do console log every time we have our count change. Right, so we have this logging. And again, it can live outside of the function, of the React. Again, magic. What if we, as well as MobX, since it's basically an observable pattern, and observable is not something invented by MobX, we have a function called computed. And if we want to get a new value based on the value we store in signal, we should use this computed value. We should use this function to, for example, have a doubled value of our signal, computed value. So I'll put it right here, for example. Again, it just updates. There's a way that we can also create a separate signal, and if we want to have a batch update, they suggest us to use batch function if we want to update two signals at once. So for example, batch and double value, count value. And we also put the value here. And we, for some reason, I mistaken somewhere, but you get the point, right?
Count, not count. Yeah, 26.
26.
Count multiply by 2, not count value, right?
Oh, no, count value. That should be like that. But I probably mistaken somewhere at the code. It doesn't really matter at the moment. So you see, the point is it's not being re-rendered, and this is the magic. So tell me how, right? There is a documentation about that. A blog post. It's actually happened like half a year ago in 2022 about introducing the signals by Preact. So what they did is, instead of passing a value directly through the component tree, they pass a signal object. So it works like useRef. And since React component depends on the object address, not the value itself, it's not being re-rendered. So it's again the same as ref. So when the signal value changes, the signal itself stays the same because we have the same object by the same address. And as a result, it can be updated without re-rendering the component. It's basically let them skip the whole React tree, and they are actually using the state tree of React. So yeah, they are digging into the React implementation, current React implementation, taking into account the state tree. They know in which component they use this signal, and they are updating only the DOM node we use the signal in. But on the big project, they have this picture in their blog post. They are claiming that it's rapidly optimized the code, and on the big project, it basically in this example, from 2600 milliseconds, it goes down by 600 milliseconds, which is, I don't know, 3 times, right? 4 times. So this is big. And the question is, should we use it? And this is actually probably this discussion kicker for our networking afterwards in Q&A session. If you want, yeah, go for it. It would be really interesting to see the real projects implemented with such approach. And at Wix, we have an opportunity. We use this approach of 20% of their time you can spend on something like research or learning or working at the guilds. And really, it would be nice to see something real recent like that. But again, this guy, you probably know him, it's Dan Abramov, the guy who didn't invent React. He is working right now with Meta in React core team, and he claims that guys who invented signals basically dig into the React internals and they're patching them, and their implementation is being implemented on a fragile assumption about how React works. So basically what he's saying is the next time we are delivering the update of React, it probably will fail. And where I got this from is issue from Facebook React at GitHub, where some guy claims that material design button just fails. It do not renders at all. It fails the application. And they have a lot of issues like that on the applications where we use Preact signals. So this is the case where hardware loses the guarantee period, and you should investigate it on your own. But we are waiting as a community for Preact to react on that, and I mean to give a reaction and explanation on that, and probably Preact team would be able to solve that. And if yes, it would be a huge game changer in terms of the performance. My personal opinion on that, using such an approach, it would be a mess to work on a big scale projects, because basically you have one constant with some value and you can store it wherever it is, and you can import it from where.
For it, and that's it. Like store it in a React store or
React context, you mean?
It depends. It depends. You can store it in React state if it's something small, or you can store it in React context and also take it from context in another place.
Yeah.
At least this how this one will be manageable, and you don't need to manually dispose it and so on. Because if it is out of your React component, it stays there forever.
Yeah, this is the main problem is that you can basically do with whatever you want with that, and this is not what you would like to on a big project. This is exactly what Sergey talks about the case with Mobix. So in JavaScript you can do whatever you want with the values right there, right?
Probably this library is not applicable to React Native.
No, it is. You can. It's just an example of using it in React, but basically they are using pure JavaScript, so you can try to work with it anywhere. And actually, there's a new framework called Quick, so it's alternative to React, and they claim that they will be adopting this pattern of signals going forwards and forever, and they really trust in that. So maybe we are in period where there will be a huge game changer, in the market, like for example Next.js right now. So we need to see. If you want to play with that, I got a repo, so you can scan it, or I have hosted this particular application at this subdomain. You can play with it. Also, this is actually at the end of the presentation, so I need to mention that this is I have a podcast called GPT, because GPT is something that's very popular at the moment. It's actually in Ukrainian, so I'm sorry. I apologize to my Polish colleagues. But we also have a Ukrainian speaking podcast for Wix frontend. It's called WTFET, where we are explaining in Ukrainian the history of frontend at Wix. So we are trying to drive this Ukrainian community right there. And yeah, I also have this YouTube channel and myself, so you can find it all right here by the QR code. And if you want to speak with me directly, there should be a Calendly link, or, well, you can talk to me during the networking right now. So this is it. Thank you, and I'm open for questions. I know this is quite a Hollywood discussion, and thank you for coming again.